Lessons from the Tarmac. Saturday summons. Saturday, October 25th, a date that arrived not merely on the calendar, but as a silent summons. This morning, I were cradled by serenity, a current of pure, unadulterated excitement humming just beneath my skin. It was a feeling so potent, it was almost premonition. Then, a cold, stark truth descended, a crushing realization that today, of all days, the one thing I craved would be denied to me. The page would remain blank. My weekends, my sacred refuge, are when I grant myself permission to vanish into the written word, to submerge myself completely in the torrent of my own thoughts. To be deprived of this is a particular kind of agony. I have often tried to explain this compulsion to others. For me, writing is like a child who, after a lifetime of starvation, is suddenly locked inside a candy store overnight. The air is thick with the scent of sugar and promise, jars of glittering candies and towers of forbidden cookies stretch as far as the eye can see. That child, wide-eyed and breathless, is finally set free to indulge every buried craving. That is euphoria. That is being on cloud nine. And that is precisely where I find myself now. I have made a decision, a pivotal one. For years, my mind has become a saturated reservoir, swollen with unspoken stories, unvoiced truths, and memories pressing against the dam of silence. The pressure has become unbearable. I can no longer simply contain it. I must release the flood. This is not the beginning of a story. It is the beginning of an unburdening. And the world has no idea what is about to be unleashed. A pact with the unwritten. And so a contingency was born. A secret pact between my yearning and my resolve. The laptop, sleek and heavy with potential. The laptop would find its way into my carry-on. A silent prayer took shape. For a delayed flight, a long layover, any stolen sliver of time where I could crack open the lid and let the light spill onto the page. Even the wait on Monday return journey became a beacon, a future oasis of solitude amidst the chaos of transit. The journey itself was for a joyous cause, a short weekend to celebrate a beloved honorary daughter, a pilgrimage of the heart, and one I would not forsake. Yet, as I prepared to depart, a thin, cold thread of sadness wove itself through my anticipation. The compulsion to write had become a physical presence, a constant hum in my veins, and the thought of silencing it for even 2 days felt like a betrayal. The universe cast its vote. Fate, it seemed, issued its first challenge. The departure time shifted, a subtle, critical adjustment from the pre-dawn 6 a.m. to a more civil 9 a.m. This simple change tightened the threads of possibility to a single taut strand. The connection to my next flight was now perilously narrow, a race against the clock, where every minute would be a currency spent on hope. It was possible, but only just possible. As I stepped into the bustling terminal, a profound clarity settled over me. My heart yearned to be present, to stand in celebration of someone so incredible, so integral to my life. The desire was a genuine fire, yet alongside it bloomed a serene and startling acceptance. A quiet conviction whispered that if a greater design, if the universe itself decreed that this was not my day to travel, but my day to write, I would receive that verdict with peace. The decision was no longer mine. It had been placed in the hands of something far greater, something far larger. The airport became an arena of destiny. Would the path lead me to a joyous celebration? Or would divine intervention strand me in a quiet corner, my laptop open, finally granting the story its desperate, demanding voice? The universe was about to cast its vote. The test of the terminal. The airport corridor stretched before me, a river of hurried travelers flowing towards the newly renovated area. But my path was blocked by a snaking, stagnant line, enormously long, unnerving slope. First subtle knot of tension tightened in my stomach. This was not normal. When I finally reached the agent, her courtesy was a brief balm. She processed my details and said, the boarding pass, and slid the boarding pass towards me. Her question was casual, yet it would send a crack splintering through my certainty. Are you going to Newark? My word tilted. No, I replied, my voice steady, but my mind racing. I am going to New Jersey. A chasm of misunderstanding opened between us. She did not know the name of the airport. I did not know the connection. For a terrifying suspended moment, I was adrift. Had I, in my fervor to make this journey, committed a fundamental error? Had my own focus been so consumed by the story I needed to write that I had blindly purchased a ticket to the wrong city? The agent's demeanor shifted. She would not, she stated with bureaucratic finality, she would not release my boarding pass to me if I could not confirm my destination. The clock was ticking, and the universe seemed to be holding its breath. This was the test. Was this the intervention I had passively accepted? With trembling hands, I fumbled for my phone, a lifeline. One call to my honorary daughter, one simple, desperate question. Is Newark in New Jersey? Her yes was not just an answer. It was a key turning in a lock, confirmation that the path was still open. The universe had not blocked my path, but it had issued a stern, heart-pounding warning. Nothing about this journey was guaranteed. A ticket, but not a seat. The boarding pass was in my hand, a flimsy slip of paper that felt like a temporary victory. But the agent's voice pulled me back. There was an offer, a temptation. Would I be willing to surrender my seat? The flight was overbooked. A voucher was the price for my compliance. My refusal was immediately etched in the stone of my commitment. The event is set in stone, I explained, my grip tightening on my carry-on, the laptop feeling more essential than ever. Then came the final unsettling blow. A shadow of a smile, a shrug of bureaucratic inevitability. This seat assignment was a mystery yet to be solved. I would not receive one here. I was to pass through the sacred threshold of security into the terminal space of the terminal and present myself to another higher authority at the front desk. My boarding pass was not a guarantee, it was a question. The universe had not yet denied me, but it was refusing to grant me certainty. I was being sent forward into the unknown, my fate still hanging in the balance. The journey had become a trial, and the next gate held the verdict. The three-strike doctrine. A cold clarity washed over me. This was no longer a series of coincidences. It was a pattern, A narrative was unfolding, written in the language of obstruction. My mind, ever the strategist, immediately framed in within my own personal doctrine, the three-strike rule. Strike one, the flight time, cruelly shielded, tightening my connection to a single fraying thread. Strike two, the phantom seat, a boarding pass that was merely an invitation to plead my case at a higher court. My place on the aircraft still a tantalizing, uncertain promise. I stood there amidst the terminal's hum and made a silent pact with the universe. The next move was yours. One more sign, one more hurdle. A third strike would not be a disappointment. It would be a divine decree. It would be an undeniable command to turn around, to return to the quiet sanctuary of my home, and to surrender completely to the story that was so desperately trying to be born. The game was on, and I was waiting for the final pitch. The hovering third strike. Navigating TSA was a fleeting, effortless breeze, a small mercy that felt like the calm before the storm. I took my position at the gate, a silent sentinel waiting for the agent to arrive. I was the first to approach, a move that drew a flicker of annoyance from her weary eyes, for I had not even allowed her the courtesy to sign in. Yet her professionalism prevailed, and she was graciously kind. That wait, as she logged into her machine, finally she looked up my information. The printer whirled and she slid the finalized boarding pass across the counter. A seat was assigned. Relief, warm and immediate, flooded through me. This is a truly good sign. I whispered to myself. A smile touched my lips. This means I'm going to leave. I looked to the monitor for confirmation. There it was, a stacked digital letters. Departure time 9 a.m. But then a silence fell. The appointed time for boarding came and vanished without a single announcement. The scheduled departure time of 9 a.m. arrived, and then it too was a memory. The gate area, once calm, began to thrum with a low, anxious energy. People shifted, sighed, and crowded the desk, seeking answers that did not come. My newfound certainty began to curdle. I watched the minute hand on the clock sweep forward, and my heart sank with it. This is it, I thought. The realization, cold and clear. I am not getting on this flight today. As if summoned by my thought, my phone vibrated. A text from a friend. Have you left yet? My reply was a single heavy no. The response was immediate, a verdict from the outside world that mirrored my own crumbling hope. You probably won't get to go today. The third strike was hovering in the air, and the entire world seemed to be holding its breath for the final call. The third strike. A flicker of movement on the slick tarmac caught my eye. Four workmen, clad in high visibility gear, stood at attention not too far from the empty gate. This postured readiness was a silent signal. My mind, ever seeking hope, grasped at the most logical conclusion. The plane had landed. This was the preparation for our boarding. A wave of relief began to thaw my anxiety. The delay was over. The path was clearing. But the collective tension in the gate area was a palpable force. It broke in the form of a frustrated shout from a fellow passenger, demanding an answer from the agent. Why were we still grounded? The agent, unshaken, offered a placating gesture. She assured the crowd, just preparing to make an announcement. When she spoke, her voice was a master class in calm, a soothing balm over a wound of frustration. But the words she delivered were not soothing. They were the final, undeniable verdict. The aircraft, she explained, with a gentle authority, could not land here due to the heavy fog. It had been returned It had returned to Dallas. It has been focused, it had been forced to return to Dallas. She then invited everyone to form a line for further instructions. But instructions were no longer needed. The message was clear. The third strike had fallen not with a bang, but with a quiet, meteorological inevitability. The universe had made its decision. The void of information. A wave of passengers surged forward into a single line, anxious line that snaked away from the gate. It was a portrait of collective helplessness. But I remained seated, an island of stillness in the chaos. Past experience had taught me a valuable lesson. In the digital age, the most direct path to an answer is not always through the crowd. While others prepared for a long wait, I summoned a portal to the airline itself. I made a phone call, and within 5 minutes, a voice was on the line. A teacher to the outside world. I posed what the question that hung on every mind in the terminal: when? The answer that came back was not a solution, but a void. There's no word, the voice stated, on when the aircraft can return to Lawton. The sentence hung in the air, its implications vast and chilling. This was not a delay. This was an indefinite suspension. The path forward had not just been blocked, it had vanished into the very fog that had caused its disruption. The universe had not only issued its third strike, it had erased the playing field. The untethered path. The voice on the phone, ever professional, extended the offer left: a full refund and a sincere apology for the disruption. The money, she explained, would find its way back to me in 5 days. A mundane detail that now felt entirely relevant. I assured her that the fault lay not with any person, but with the indifferent heavens. The weather is a force beyond any airline's command. But as I spoke the next words, I felt a profound shift within myself, a closing of one door and the opening of another. Since I cannot reach my final destination today, I stated, my voice calm with a newly found certainty, I will accept the refund. In that moment, it was done. The universe had intervened, not with a shout, but with a blanket of fog, and I, having heeded its signs, was now officially untethered from my planned path. The journey to New Jersey was over before it even began, but another journey was just about to begin. The genesis of a secret series. A flick of disappointment, natural and human, washed over me. The prepared luggage, a carefully styled hair, the cherished anticipation of a celebration, all of it now a phantom itinerary. But that shadow of regret was astonishingly brief, burned away in a sudden, brilliant sunrise of understanding. Within minutes, a pure, unadulterated ecstasy came over me. This was not a failure. It was a revelation, a plot twisted, authored by fate itself. Yes, a voice within me whispered, this is the story. You must write about this story. The cancelled trip was not an ending, but the genesis of a new series. The first chapter in a chronicle of travel nightmares and the profound lessons they conceal. And to protect this creation, I would enact a beautiful strategic silence. My absence from the celebration would remain my secret, allowing me to retreat into sacred quiet of my home, locked in my bedroom with my laptop as my sole confidant, finally at peace to document this divine intervention. Today I am on cloud nine, not because my plans succeeded, but because they spectacularly collapsed to reveal a greater purpose. Though my writing schedule is already brimming with other commitments, the seed of this new series has been planted. I cannot wait to begin unspooling the narratives of today's journey gone away. Each one is a hidden map to a deeper truth. The adventure, it turns out, was only just the beginning. So, symphony of confirmation. I cannot proclaim the three strike rule as a universal truth, but I can bear witness to its infallible guidance in my own life. After the third strike fell, I returned to the sanctuary of my home and surrendered to the indulgence of documenting the day's strange unwinding path. Yet, as initial euphoria settled, a sliver of human doubt, insidious and whispering, began to needle its way into my consciousness. What if, this time, you were wrong? It murmured. What if your conviction was merely a self-fulfilling prophecy, a graceful excuse for surrender? What if you have traded a celebration for solitude you did not need to claim? I immersed myself in the words, seeking solace in the narrative. And then the universe, in its unimaginable style, began to speak, not with a single pronouncement, not with a single pronouncement, but with a symphony of chaotic evidence. My phone, resting beside my laptop, began to illuminate with a relentless rhythmic pulse. One after another, the automated updates from the airline arrived, each one a verse in a poem of beautiful, undeniable chaos. First one, 11:45 a.m., a new departure time, a flicker of what if. Then the next one, 11:35 a.m., a correction, the plan was already unstable. Then 11:45 a.m., a reversal, the system was confused. Then 12:17 p.m., a further slip into the aftermath. And then 12:47 p.m., then 1:17 p.m., followed by 1:42 p.m. Then the flight was changed back to 1:17 p.m. and then 1:37 p.m. And then the definitive, almost comical verdict, 2:35 p.m. I watched this digital waterfall of indecision. My doubt evaporated with every single notification from the airline. There was no anger, only a profound and peaceful awe. The evidence was irrefutable. Had I remained at the airport, I would have been a prisoner of that terminal, a pawn in a game of endless rescheduling. My entire day evaporating while I waited for a journey that was never meant to be. The path to Dallas was closed. The connection to New Jersey was an impossibility. My decision to return home was not merely correct. It was, I now saw with crystalline clarity, the only decision. The three strike rule had not failed me. It had once again set me free. And as I returned to my writing, the click of the keys was no longer just a sound of creation, but the sound of a perfect cosmic alignment. The unseen weather, a lesson in trusting the signs. So on the ground in Lawton, Oklahoma, the air was clear. To the naked eyes, there was no visible reason for the chaos that unfolded. One could have easily grown frustrated, angry at the airline for cancellation that seemed, from our limited perspective, entirely unfounded. But the truth was not found at our feet. It was found in the heavens. The fog, a thick and impenetrable blanket, existed where it mattered most, at the altitude where machines of steel and ambition must surrender to the mutable laws of nature. The obstacle was real, even if it was invisible to us. This is the paramount lesson of the day. Just because you cannot see the obstacle does not mean it isn't there. We so often operate with a ground level perspective. We see our plans, our desires, our immediate reality. When something disrupts that plan, our first reaction is often to question the validity of the disruption itself. This makes no sense. We cry blindly by our own frustration. But the universe operates on an aerial view. It sees the fog we cannot see. It perceives the congestion, the hidden dangers, the timing that is not yet right, the collision of events that must be avoided. My three strike rule was not a policy of giving up. It was a practice of faith. It was a decision to trust the signals, the change flight, the unassigned seat, the final cancellation as evidence of a larger unseen weather pattern at work. The cancellation was not a failure of my plan, but a protection of it. Had I forced my way forward, I would have been stranded in Dallas. My entire weekend lost to the airport terminal. Instead, I was guided home to the profound peace of my true calling that day to write. The lesson then is to cultivate trust in the unseen. It is to understand that a closed door is not always a rejection. A closed door is not always a rejection, but often a redirection. It is to accept that the fog in the clouds, though invisible from the ground, is a force more powerful than any schedule. And sometimes the greatest journey you can take is the one that leads you back to yourself, to the quiet place where your own voice, once drowned out by the noise of your plans, can finally be heard. So, in summary, a summary of the day. Today, the universe was amazing. What began as a journey to celebrate a loved one transformed into a profound lesson in learning. A shifted flight time was my first clue. A boarding pass without a seat assigned was my second. The final, undeniable sign came as an announcement. My plane had to return to Dallas due to fog. The fog that we could not see from the ground. I operated on a three-strike rule, a personal pact to heed these cosmic redirections. With the third strike delivered, I surrendered. I accepted a refund. I returned home and retreated into the sacred silence of my writing. And then my phone lit up, a torrent of frantic updates, pushing the departure time later and later into the afternoon. It was a universe receipt, a confirmation that my decision to trade a terminal for my writing in my bedroom was not just correct, but destined. The journey to New Jersey was cancelled, but the path to a new series of stories born from the beautiful chaos of travel was just beginning. Today, I didn't reach my intended destination, but I arrived exactly where I was meant to be. A new series. The beginning of a new series. The new series is entitled Lessons from the Tarmac.